It's the evening of November 9th, 1989, and Germany, still divided at this point, is in somewhat confusion after a botched press conference by the East Germans mistakenly announcing that after decades of separation, East Berliners could immediately cross into West Berlin. By 10:30 PM, overwhelmed and unprepared guards simply opened the gates. An iconic moment not just in German history, those tears of joy, people on top of the wall celebrating, these images have become iconic worldwide and marked the collapse of the East German regime. Within a year, East Germany was reunified with West Germany. But what did all this mean for football? Yes guys, today we're going to be reliving that crazy final season of the DDR Oberliga, which is factually incorrect as that final East German season was renamed the NOFV Oberliga. East Germany's Oberliga was one of the most politically charged football leagues in history. So let's take a look at that last chaotic, emotional and unforgettable chapter in German football history.
There's no easy way out. There's no shortcut home. There's no easy way out. Giving in can't be wrong.
Now I don't know why, as a Brit, I'm so fascinated by East German culture, the former DDR, and more specifically football in East Germany. I just am. And many of the clubs we're going to be talking about in this video we'll be visiting in person this season and seeing for ourselves exactly what their football culture is like. Obviously it might have changed. For example, my club, Tief im Westen, deep in the west, VfL Bochum, have just been drawn against one of the most successful, definitely the most controversial during that time, BFC Dynamo. But more on those guys in a moment. Surprisingly, many Brits I've spoken to are completely unaware that Germany was once split into two different countries. This came as a result of Germany being split into four post-World War II. Us Brits had the northwest quarter, the French had the southwest, the Americans had the southeast, and of course today's subject, the northeastern quadrant, was run by the Soviet Union. Oh, and don't forget Berlin, that was split up as well. Anyway, in 1949, after growing tension between the Western occupied areas and the Soviets, West Germany was formed, and later, East Germany was formed. So, as a foreigner, I'm still learning about all this myself. I was born in 1989, shortly before the wall came down, so I was a baby during that time. But through speaking to people from the West, from the East, from reading things online, the general narrative seems to be that reunification failed when it comes to football. So let's take a look at the clubs in that final season and where they are today. So naturally, with East Germany being founded in 1949, so was the DDR Oberliga. But unlike football in West Germany, which developed incredibly well over the years, and I'm saying this as an Englishman, as I look on with envy at all the success.
Here goes Waddle. Oh dear, it's West Germany. They've reached a third consecutive World Cup final.
The East was slower in terms of development. The East used football, like many other sports, as a stage for politics, but it wasn't the favoured sport in an era under the Iron Curtain. The DDR loved athletics and gold medals, so football was often an afterthought in the minds of those who ran the country. But it definitely wasn't an afterthought in the minds of the East German people. It was a place people could come and vent their frustrations in a country that was getting more and more restrictive. Football clubs in the East were sponsored by state institutions. For example, you had Chemie Leipzig, sponsored by the large GDR chemical sector. Their rivals, Lok Leipzig, aka Lokomotive Leipzig, they were sponsored by the state railways. Energie Cottbus, obviously backed by the energy sector. And two which stand out would probably be the two sponsored by the police, the secret police, the Stasi. Of course, you had Dynamo Dresden and BFC Dynamo in Berlin. Although both technically backed by the secret police, we know over time which club the Stasi definitely preferred. Led by head of the Stasi, Erich Mielke, BFC Dynamo in Berlin were the preferred choice. He even moved the whole Dresden first team and the staff to Berlin in 1954. We know despite this, Dynamo Dresden rebuilt and became an absolute powerhouse in East German football. And in that final season in 1990/91, they finished second, which meant they qualified for the new reunified German Bundesliga in the 91/92 season.
Aber das Entscheidende ist, dass wir in der Bundesliga sind und überglücklich sind nach einem ganz anstrengenden Jahr mit Höhen und Tiefen.
Which surely meant that BFC Dynamo, their rivals, finished first? No? Third? No? Fourth? No? You're joking. 11th, yes. BFC Dynamo, the Stasi-backed club, would fall in that final season to 11th place. So this is why we can't talk about that final East German season without looking back, as we mentioned, those state sponsorships and the role they played in terms of a club's success. The funding, the backing by these sponsors had a massive impact as to where these clubs would finish. Take BFC Dynamo, for example. They'd had favoured decisions, they had financial backing from the Stasi, they were the chosen ones. But you take that all away and it just shows they fell down the leagues. But as much as that might be celebrated due to some corruption amongst many of you, the same significance, the same thing relates to the other clubs. They were losing their sponsors and therefore they were losing some of their identities and most definitely competitiveness when it came to reunification. With the Stasi gone, it was the end of an era for BFC Dynamo. They'd enjoyed a 10-year dominance of the league from 1979 to 1988. But by 1991, they sat in a measly 11th place, going from European football in the 80s to missing out on not just the Bundesliga, but the Zweite Bundesliga as well. In a reunified 91/92 season, they were playing in Germany's third tier. They didn't just lose their dominance and their funding though, as prior to that 90/91 season beginning, they had their name changed. No longer were they BFC Dynamo, Dynamo Berlin, they were renamed FC Berlin. As we've just mentioned, although many people will look at what happened to BFC Dynamo positively due to their corruption, I guess, I don't mean to offend anyone, we need to look at how what happened to them was a mirror of what happened to other clubs. As we said, when you lost your state sponsorship and now you are open to the Western world, you are open to Western clubs eyeing up your players, not only were you now fighting to compete with fellow East German clubs in that final season, fighting for a spot in a reunified German league system, fighting to get in the Bundesliga, the Zweite Bundesliga and so on, you now had to fend off those West German clubs. What does a club do? Like Energie Cottbus, I don't know why I'm pointing to an electric pylon, I guess that's Energie for you. What does Energie Cottbus do when he doesn't have, or when they don't have the energy sector behind them? What does Chemie Leipzig do without the chemical industry? They had to, all of a sudden, they had to work out what they were going to do financially. You found that many of these East German clubs, in an effort to compete against the West, they were overspending, and decades on, financial difficulties followed for many of these clubs. Most notably, you had Matthias Sammer go from Dresden to Stuttgart, Ulf Kirsten go from Dresden to Leverkusen, and Thomas Doll from BFC Dynamo to Hamburg. By the time that final season had come around, attendances for games were at an all-time low. Fed up of the favouritism towards BFC and in protest to the GDR, fans weren't showing up, and by the late 80s the average attendance fell below 10,000. In the 89-90 season, the average attendance was only 8,304, and in this final season it had almost halved again, with an average of only 4,864. East Germans were now exposed to the glamour of the West German Bundesliga, and eyeballs were starting to drift. But let's just take a look at the final table. Where did those 14 teams finish, and where are they now? As many of you know already, that final season was won by Hansa Rostock, who currently play in the DDR Oberliga, a club we'll hopefully visit this season, playing at the OBSCURITY Stadion. And as we mentioned, Dynamo Dresden finished second. And as you might already know as well, only 2 clubs made their way to the Bundesliga. It was soon clear after reunification that the East German clubs required major investment. Some of the stadiums were run down, haggard and not fit for purpose, so it's easy to pick holes in what they could have done post-reunification, but it's clear that there was some serious work to do if they were to catch up with the West. Ladies and gents, just like your postman did they deliver on promises. We know controversially that only 2 spots were awarded for East German clubs in the Bundesliga. Only 4 spots automatically went into the new north-south divided Zweite Bundesliga. 2 went up in the playoffs, so there were 6 clubs from the DDR in the Zweite Bundesliga. Was that enough? Could they have done more? Could they have offered more spots, more opportunities? Could they have given some of these East German clubs a bit of a head start, knowing the financial differences between both sets of clubs? Some of these names you won't recognise. Many went bankrupt and had to reform. Take 3rd place Rot-Weiss Erfurt, who had continued to struggle in recent years, gone bankrupt in 2020, reforming, and are currently in Regionalliga Nordost, despite being 2-time DDR Oberliga champions. The team, currently known as BSG Stahl Brandenburg, are a reformed version of the club who finished 8th in that final season, but by 1998 they went bankrupt and over the years have changed their name many times and never recovered. Currently playing, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in the 7th tier of German football. A similar story went down for 9th place, Eisenhüttenstädter, Christ, terrible pronunciation, I do apologise, who faced bankruptcy like many of the other clubs. Name changes and mergers over the years, but fun fact, in that last East German season they did reach the cup final but lost to Hansa Rostock, who I guess did a double in that final season of East German football. The club, currently known as 1. FC Frankfurt. Christ, is that Erster? FC Frankfurt? Again, maybe I should have researched these pronunciations, I do apologise. This club has one of the craziest histories over the years and are technically a 6-time East German champion. Under different names, they finished rock bottom though in that final season in 14th as FC Victoria Frankfurt Oder, previously sponsored by the army, known as FC Vorwärts Frankfurt Oder. And just to remind us Brits, that's not the same Frankfurt Eintracht Frankfurt play at. There's a different Frankfurt over towards the east. The club had been moved there from Berlin, playing under numerous variations to the name Vorwärts Berlin. And in typical East German craziness, they'd previously been moved there from Leipzig. This, I guess, is the East German equivalent of MK Dons, the famous franchise club here in England, formerly known as Wimbledon FC, who were moved to Milton Keynes. Think of that on steroids. Think of that in typical Iron Curtain style. This club has moved all over the place and do have quite a successful history. 12th place, Sachsen Leipzig, no longer exist, but their successor, FSV Leipzig, are currently playing in the regional leagues. 2 of the biggest names which stand out to me on this table are Energie Cottbus, again a club we experienced last year against the champions of this season, Hansa Rostock. Hopefully we'll be back there again this season. Cottbus are currently playing in the DDR Liga, narrowly missing out I guess on promotion to the Zweite Bundesliga last season. Another one on the list, FC Magdeburg, who are the only East German club to have won a major European trophy. They won the Cup Winners' Cup. Again, kind of narrowly missed out on promotion to the Bundesliga I guess last season. They're currently playing in the Zweite Bundesliga and therefore will be playing against us this season. As a reminder, I'm going to every single away game this year with Bochum, as well as experiencing different football cultures. Very much looking forward to experiencing the East. I'm very much looking forward to experiencing Magdeburg as well. I guess I need to do some kind of conclusion here, and it's been a difficult video to make. There's so much more I could have spoke about, especially in that final season. But it literally is like going down a rabbit hole When you venture into East German football, the former DDR Oberliga, there's so much you can talk about. There's so much controversy. As I said, I want to kind of stay away from modern day politics because there is kind of not a physical divide, but in terms of politically, the country is still very divided. Let's not go down that route. But with that said, politics do definitely play an important part in German football. A year ago, I ventured into German football with the opinion that politics should stay out of football. In terms of England, a lot of people think that, but when it comes to Germany, the political ties, the identity of all these clubs does play a massive role into why German football culture is so great. It's because of these values and the fans standing up to, should I say, what they believe in, is as to why there is such a great culture, football culture in Germany. Wow, today is hot. I mean, the irony is, as I look to my notes, that the two clubs from Eastern Germany, currently in the Bundesliga, obviously the most hated one in RB Leipzig, obviously again didn't exist during this era. They almost capitalised on the East people, the people that have been deprived of commercialism, the people that lived under far left communism. Some of these people welcomed Red Bull with open arms because of the life they led in the former East Germany. We need to remember that we're products of our environment. We've all grown up amongst different people under different beliefs, and I know a lot of people do hate on the East because they get targeted, they get labelled as to being far right. But if we're to talk about FC St. Pauli, there's a St. Pauli shirt over there. I'm not far left by any means. I'm not far right either. I'm politically fairly neutral. But if we're to talk about history from a left-wing perspective, we need to look at the clubs that are often tarnished with the reputation as to being far right. Again, as a foreigner, I can't really talk about that too much, but we will be there in person to kind of get a feel and experience this in person. I know a lot of my friends from the East have shared their opinions, or my friends from the West, should I say, have shared their opinions on the East. The feeling I get as a foreigner, there definitely is a kind of slight divide in people's mentality. But in terms of football, I'm really interested to see what the culture of these clubs is like in 2025 and 26 this season. It's going to be fantastic. I'm looking at my notes. I did see that Lok Leipzig had a cameo appearance in the Bundesliga in a 93-94 season. Apparently they're the second worst team in Bundesliga history. I'm guessing the worst team is that one in Berlin we visited. What's it called? Something Berlin. Not Tennis, Borussia Berlin. I was worried that VfL Bochum would beat their record when we started this past season. Also, we need to quickly mention the other Eastern team currently playing in the Bundesliga. Now, obviously Union Berlin were not mentioned in this video because they were not in the DDR Oberliga, or the whatever it's called, Oberliga during that final season. They were in the second division, so it does show that some of the teams suppressed during that era are the teams who have flourished, albeit through decades of struggle. Obviously, these guys got to the Bundesliga only a few years ago, but they only got to the Zweite Bundesliga in 2009. This club were rivals with, or still are rivals with, BFC Dynamo. Obviously Dynamo, the favoured club with the Stasi. Union Berlin were known more as the People's Club. Very, very well supported. I'm saying this as a Bochum fan. We do have a slight rivalry off the back of this past season, but also off the back of a little friendship with Dynamo. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you do smash that like button. We are going to be in Germany every couple of weeks. We're going to be exclusively covering German football during the 25-26 season. Two main series for the season coming up. We've got Auswärtsdays, a combination word of away days, and covering Auswärtsspiels every single away day with the VfL. Of course, on that same weekend, we're going to get to other clubs and stadiums. All right, buddy? Which club are you most looking forward to seeing this season? Magdeburg. Oh, he's a Magdeburg fan. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Again, let us know where you're most looking forward to us visiting this season. It doesn't have to be in the East. Again, we're going to be all over the place. It's been a pleasure. Dankeschön, and auf Wiedersehen.